Hi, this is Annette Jacobson. I'm with Twisted Pastries Coffee House. I love to bake, and today I'm going to show you how to make a recipe that I absolutely love, and it is our carrot cake, but turning it into bars. Perfect for the Easter season. Lots of, great things in there, and a very easy recipe to impress your family and friends. So first of all, I'm going to show you the recipe, and I'm just going to leave it up here for a couple of seconds so that you guys can write it down. And I've sectioned it off to where the beginning, and I'll show it again at the end of the video so that you have time to grab a pen and paper. So I sectioned it off with the first part of the video, or the first part of the recipe being the wet ingredients that you're gonna mix together, and it says mix well. Then on top of that, you're gonna add your dry ingredients, and then you're gonna mix well again. And then finally, you're gonna mix in the really cool stuff, the carrots and such. Okay, again, I will show that at the end of the video as well. Okay, so what you want to start with first is, like I said, the wet ingredients. And what that is it calls for 3 eggs. And you guys can write this down as I move along as well. But like I said, I will show it at the end. So it's 3 eggs. I don't like to hit the eggs against any sides of anything besides just the countertop because they tend to crack a little bit more, and then you could end up with eggshells in whatever it is that you're making. So the next part, just get my little, it's always good to have a little towel that you can wipe your hands on too. And it's a really great idea to get everything ready for your recipe before you get started too, like I've done here today. Getting it all prepped makes it moving along a lot easier, especially if you're making multiples of the same recipe, you're having a large gathering, or you're making multiples to deliver to people's houses as gifts. So then you want to do 2 cups of sugar, and this is a white granulated sugar. Always make sure that when you're measuring the cups that it is level, because if you add too much or you don't add enough, it will affect the way that your recipe turns out. So I always like to give it a big scoop and then just kind of shake and level it off. Okay. 3/4 cup of vegetable oil. So I have a 1/4 cup here. I'm going to do 3 of those. Okay. The next thing to add is 3/4 cup of milk. And honestly, I switch between, there are certain recipes that call for certain types of milks, between a whole milk or a half and half, or even a condensed or evaporated. For recipes like this that don't get specific, I use either skim 1% or 2%, and they yield the same results. So no worries there. And then you're going to add 2 teaspoons of vanilla. I really like this Watkins pure vanilla. I always use pure vanilla over an imitation. I just feel that it's got a better flavor in your end result. Okay, so I am going to mix this up. Make sure that if you do have a KitchenAid, make sure you use it. Anything that you can do to get the machine to do the work for you, I am in favor of. So we're gonna let that mix up. I'm gonna run through while that's mixing here for a couple of minutes. I've already taken my carrots that I just store-bought. I like to have them already peeled, then I don't have to take the time to peel them myself. I throw them in a blender, a smoothie maker, anything that can grind it down to where it's really fine. Or you can leave it even a little coarser. Some people like to see lots of chunks in their cake. I also am going to be adding a cup, so 2 cups of the ground carrots, 1 can of crushed pineapple, and you're going to use a strainer to strain that. And I've already done so. So I have got, I don't know if you guys can see this, but I've already got this strained and also squeezed out. So there's very little juice left in there because that will add a lot of liquid to your cake. Then you want to use 1 cup of chopped walnuts. I love good quality nuts when I bake. And 1 cup of fresh coconut flakes. So that will add some really good flavor and some good texture. So now it looks like I've got a really good base here that's mixed up. Everything's looking the same. There's no chunks of anything in there. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that pineapple, and it's a whole can that was squeezed out. So sorry if I'm off camera right here. I just wanna make sure that it gets into this mixer really well. And then all of the carrots that we chopped up, which equals 2 cups. So you're gonna measure that carrot out before you put it into the blender. So then you're all set to just scoop it out of your blender and put it right into your mixer. Okay. And then I'm gonna put in 1 cup of coconut flakes. So I like to, this stuff can be well packed or it can be light and fluffy. I like to leave it a little light and fluffy and just a little over the top. Makes a good cup, good full cup. And the last thing that I need here is a cup of walnuts. I buy the ones that are already chopped, so I don't have to do any work with that. Kind of the same thing like the coconut. You want to get it as close as possible because it is larger pieces that don't equal exactly a full cup. Okay, then what you want to do is you want to turn your mixer back on. While that's mixing, you want to take a pan, either a 9x13 or a 8x8, 9x9, whatever you prefer, and it just gets thicker the smaller the pan that you have, but any one of them would do for this recipe. You want to take some good quality grease spray, vegetable oil spray the pan so that you definitely can get that cake out when you need to. And then what I like to do is I like to just put a couple of tablespoons of flour in the pan, and then what you want to do is you just want to shake it. So you're going to this is what's called grease and flouring, to coat that pan really, really well. So when your cake is done, you're going to be able to get it out of there. So very common when you're making cakes. What I do with the excess then is I tap it out into the garbage can. I'm just going to use a little bowl here, and that's where all the little extra remnants, because you don't want them sitting in the pan because it'll just add to your cake. Okay, so that's our pan. Oven's already on, warmed up at 350. All right, that looks like it's really mixed really well. And then we want to add in here 2 cups of flour. So now we're going to start with our dry ingredients. And what you want to do with your flour, and I know we've talked about this before, is you want to be able to scrape that top back off into the flour container so that you have a nice full cup, because this too will make the measurements vary. All right, so there's 2 cups of flour. No need to sift on this one. We're gonna do 2 teaspoons of baking soda. I have a half a teaspoon measuring here, so that's 4 halves, makes 2 teaspoons. Okay. I'm gonna do a half a teaspoon of salt. Salt is really important in all recipes, so don't skip it, even though it seems like a little bit. And 2 teaspoons of ground cinnamon. So there's a sprinkle side and an open side. And what you want to do, and it's nice and flat too on just about any container that you're looking for, is then you just want to use your teaspoon and scrape it against the top to level off that teaspoon. Now, I do like extra cinnamon in the stuff that I bake. So when I bake with it, I'll usually give it a good little shake afterwards for a little extra. I think it's such a good flavor. So what we need to do now is just mix this really well. And then we're going to put it in the pan. So I'm going to get my pan ready, and you want to make sure that it's well mixed, and also scrape the sides of the bowl so that you don't get any clumps of flour in your cakes that you're making. I was trying to remember the other day where exactly I came across this carrot cake recipe, and I honestly cannot recall where it came from, but I've had it for a really long time, and it's always been a favorite. So as you're making this, if you're not a fan of nuts, you don't have to put them in here. If you're not a fan of walnuts, you can all substitute them for pecans. So the recipe called for walnuts, and I always think that that's just a really good flavor to go with the carrot and the coconut. So, all right, so we've got this mixed. I'm gonna just make sure that everything is off the bottom, off the sides, well mixed in there. It's gonna be chunky, but no worries, when it bakes, it's gonna bake awesome. So you're gonna wanna fill the cake pan. This cake pan is just a smidgen too small for all the batter. It does fit well into a 9 by 13 or even an oversized lasagna pan. And then it levels off really easy. So sometimes when cakes don't level off and they're kind of mounded in the middle, you might want to shake it or even, tap it on your counter to level that off. This one has a lot of liquid in it, so we're just going to put it in the oven. So we're going to do 350. We're going to check it at about 20 minutes. So I'm going to set my timer. I always use a timer because time can just get away from you. So at 20 minutes, you're going to take toothpicks, poke it in the middle, because that's the part that's going to cook the longest. And if that toothpick comes out clean, then you're able to take that cake out. Otherwise, I test it like every minute and a half after that, just so that it doesn't get too well done. So what I've done is at the bottom of this recipe, I have included on here a cream cheese frosting that I got from a friend years ago, and it's absolutely the best cream cheese frosting that I've tasted, and it's really great with this kind of a cake. So it's 3/4 cup of butter, 2 cups of powdered sugar, 3 ounces of cream cheese, and a teaspoon of vanilla. And what I've done is I've gone ahead and whipped this up prior to the video, and it's really easy, and it only takes a few minutes of it whipping in, again, the KitchenAid. But what you want to do is you want to use the paddle that is more for batters than for cakes. And as you can see, it's really thick. So by the time you get done, it's whipped very, very well. Now I do have a cake that I've already completed, but we're just gonna go ahead, put this frosting on. So I have a complete cake, and this cake, don't be alarmed too, is darker. It's darker because you have dark ingredients in there. You've got cinnamon in there, you've got carrots, you've got the pineapple, all that kind of stuff can darken a cake. But it's gonna be so delicious. So what I like to do with the frosting is, you know, make sure your cake is cooled, and this one still is just a smidge warm. It will start to melt your frosting, but eventually when things cool, it will let it gel up a little bit. The other thing that I have is I have a spatula for frosting cakes that I absolutely love. And what it does is it helps you to be able to frost that cake. So just moving it around, getting ready to frost is probably one of the most satisfying parts of making the cake itself. Carrot cake is pretty unique. It's a different kind of a flavor, and I just think it goes so well with the Easter holiday, just because, you know, bunnies like to eat carrots, and we've got our Easter bunny happening at that same time. So once you get this frosting all frosted, my cake is a little warm here, and it's gonna wanna peel that top layer of cake off, so that's why you have to make sure that it's cooled. What I like to do when I'm all done is I like to take just a little bit of cinnamon, once I get it all completely frosted, and then just do just a little hint of cinnamon over the top to garnish it. So I just want to say thank you for joining me again. Happy to share my recipes with you. Again, I'd like to pop this up on the screen, and feel free to stop the video and be able to see this when you can write it down. But thank you again for joining, and I hope to be doing another recipe very soon as well. Happy Easter, everyone.